Welcome back to Forward Progress, presented by Fanduel. We are back, and we're going to be taking a look at some NFL sleepers. We're going to look at 4 teams that could shock everyone in 2025. I'm your host here, Jason Cooper, alongside Rob Bizzle. And Rob, you want to start things off here. Let's dive right into it. No beating around the bush here. Who is one of your 2 teams who you think is the market is sleeping on and you think could shock people in 2025?
Yeah, I honestly can't believe I'm saying this because I've hated this team for so long, at least not like actually hated them, but just from a betting perspective. I've seen Flup ranking on them on Twitter in the last couple days, and I got to disagree. I think that they have some like upset potential this year, and that is the Raiders. Now, to be clear, they could still be very bad in 2025. That would not surprise me, but I'm cautiously optimistic that they have the potential to shock some people. And if you want to identify teams that might take a big step forward, I think ideally a good starting point is looking at where they landed on the luck spectrum a year ago. And the Raiders were, like, if you were to do the quadrants chart, they're in like the cursed quadrant is where I would put them, because they recovered 24% of all their fumbles, all fumbles in their games last year. That's by far the worst number in the NFL. For context, the next lowest team was at 40%. So Raiders fumbles in their games, 24%. Next lowest team, 40%. That is an outrageous gap. Most fumble recovery is random, and this wasn't just bad luck. It's like comedic bad luck. Now you look at their division rivals. Chargers last year, plus 12 turnover margin. They recovered nearly 2/3 of their fumbles. Their opponents missed field goals at a very high rate. You look at the Chiefs. Yes, they have Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, but they consistently won games where they were outgained. They had the biggest gap in Pythagorean wins versus actual wins. You look at the Broncos. They barely dealt with injuries last year. 6 fewest adjusted games lost. So you have a Raiders team that vastly underachieved with 3 other divisional rivals that seemingly overachieved. And then there's more to it. Like the Raiders were hammered up front on defense. Christian Wilkins was their big defensive tackle signing. He broke his foot early and missed most of the year. Without him, run defense got cooked. Max Crosby plagued through an ankle injury pretty much the entire year, was never really himself. Malcolm Kuntz, underrated player on the D-line, tore his ACL. So that's 3 core guys on the D-line that were gone or limited. They gave up 25.5 points per game last year. It's not unfathomable for them to improve 1 or 2 points per game in that regard just by having a healthy D-line. Now, coaching. Let's not sugarcoat it. Antonio Pierce might have been the worst coach in the league last year. Bottom 3, I think, undoubtedly, and that might be being generous. I think he was deplorable. The team went on a pretty extended losing streak. They looked completely directionless. Enter Pete Carroll. I'm not a huge fan of Carroll in today's NFL, but I don't think that there's any debate that this is an upgrade at head coach. He walks into a situation with some pieces in place. He wants to run the ball and play physical. They drafted the kind of running back to do that in Ashton Genty, a legit workhorse behind a line that could actually be decent. Jackson Powers-Johnson heading into year 2. Dylan Parham is showing promise on the interior. Colton Miller anchoring things at left tackle. You add in Geno Smith, who I know people will laugh, but has been significantly better playing indoors throughout his career. You've got a chance at a competent offense there. It's not going to scare anyone. It's not going to be the offense that leads the league in points, but it doesn't have to be to play that Pete Carroll style of football. And if you look at the divisional odds at FanDuel, they're plus 1,100 to win the division right now. I'm not saying that they will, but that's a distant 4th behind 3 teams that have, way lower odds and better reputations. What if the Raiders just get average injury luck? What if they recover even 45% of fumbles instead of 24%? What if Pete Carroll is a monumental upgrade over Antonio Pierce? The bar is very low. They're being priced like a complete bottom feeder, but I think there's a real path here. Healthy D-line, strong run game, just enough Geno that they can potentially be in the wild card hunt this year. And that's why I think they're one of my could shock everyone teams, Jason.
Yeah, no, that's fair. The coaching upgrade is something I think I slept on a little bit. With just you forget how bad Antonio Pierce is for the Raiders until you take a step back and remember how really bad it was in that situation. Honestly, when you first said it, I kind of laughed at it, but I could see it. 11-1 seems pretty far off in terms of AFC West winner, and also of course, I mean, for them to make the playoffs, I'm going to try and find their odds here on Fanduel if I can pull it up. Their odds to make the playoffs, I believe they were like priced at around like 6-1. Give me a second here.
Yeah, I'll say this:
yeah, 3-1 seems a little short. Like if
I think the rate like when you're mapping out teams, right? I think the Raiders have a very wide range, right? They could potentially be terrible, but I don't think they're going to be terrible unless, a lot of the things that didn't go right for them last year, like, continue to go wrong. And I think that there's a higher ceiling than people will give them credit for. And when I'm looking for teams that might shock, the league, I think the Raiders have more of a ceiling than people realize. People just dismiss Geno Smith. Well, he's not that good. Well, I mean, look at what the Raiders have been rolling out at quarterback for recent years, right? Like, look at the head. I think there's a lot of factors that people are just sleeping on with this team.
Yeah, that's fair. I like how you mentioned also the fat tail towards the upside, right? Because that's kind of similar to the team that I'm looking at. And this might be a shock to some people, but I think in terms of market expectations, I'm higher than the market on the New York Giants in 2025. Because right now, they're being priced as the second worst team in all of football. They're priced at around a 5-win team, according to FanDuel. A lot of what you think about this team, I think, is going to be tied to Brian Daboll. Do you think he's a good offensive mind? Do you think he can elevate this offense and the talent and the pieces that they have on offense to be better than the sum of their parts? For me, their biggest offseason move, I take a look at them. They're going from quarterback, I want to say 35 in Daniel Jones, to maybe fringe top 20 quarterback in Russell Wilson. I don't think that's being priced in enough here, the difference between Russell Wilson and Daniel Jones. On top of that, they have a top 3 wide receiver in Malik Neighbors. Excuse me. I think this offense has the potential to be competent enough to be I just don't think they'll be the worst offense in the league. I think they're competent enough to be a top 20-ish offense. I really think I'm really high on Malik Neighbors. I'm really high on the combination of him with Russell Wilson. I think they could do some damage here. On top of that, and I think this is the most interesting part for me, this team has invested heavily into their defense over the past couple of years using both draft picks and through free agency. I mean, just this year in free agency, they added Javon Holland and Paulson Adebo. They also, of course, added Abdul Carter. Their trenches look incredible. Abdul Carter, like I mentioned, Brian Burns, Dexter Lawrence, and even Kayvon Thibodeau. We don't know if he's going to still be on the team, but it seems like he will be. Like, that is a threatening front seven that they have there for the New York Giants. So for me, I think that I'm a little bit higher on the New York Giants than market expectation. Where this could go wrong, there's plenty of ways this could go wrong. I could be completely wrong about Russell Wilson and his impact on the team compared to Daniel Jones. But I think that the other way that this could potentially go wrong is if maybe Jackson Dart slides in. But if Jackson Dart slides in, we don't know what he could be, right? There could be a scenario where Jackson Dart is the guy and he's better than Russell Wilson, and we're sitting pretty here. So in terms of market expectation, I'm higher on the New York Giants than most. That's one of my sleeper teams in 2025, the New York Giants.
Yeah, I mean, I love the defensive personnel. Remember, Dexter Lawrence got hurt midway through last year as well. You look at the shuffling on the offensive line a year ago with Andrew Thomas hurt. I mean, there was one point where I think they had at least 3 or 4 backups starting on the offensive line. So like in the trenches, definitely going to be upgraded to start the year just by having that personnel back. My only pushback would be that if I'm looking for a team that I think has a high ceiling, it's not a team with Russell Wilson. That's, I mean, listen, we can debate where we rank Russell Wilson and Daniel Jones. I honestly don't even know that I would take Russell Wilson over Daniel Jones. That might be pretty far-fetched, but Jameis is there. I mean, some people will be like, well, Jameis, you never know what you're going to get. Yes, you do. You're going to get a lot of interceptions, like a lot of turnovers, and it's going to be hard to win games. I understand that he pushes the ball downfield. I would be more likely to take the Giants as a shock team if I knew Jackson Dart was just going to start every game for the reasons that you mentioned. It's just like we don't know what he's going to be. We see teams out of nowhere every now and then start a quarterback that no one expects to be good, Bo Nix as an example, and then they just have a great year and leapfrog that team. So I think Russell Wilson just limits the team's ceiling. And that is my concern with the Giants, on top of obviously the division that they play in as well, with 3 teams who I think will be, solid this season. So
3? I think 2, but
if you want to get into Cowboys offense with those 2 wide receivers, in my opinion, is going to be a top 5 unit in the league, okay. And a healthy Dak Prescott. But there's reasons to be optimistic about the Giants. I do think that they're like a quarterback away from being a really good football team. Yep. but I don't think that they have the quarterback just yet.
Yeah, I just look at the Steelers, look at them going 10-7. I know Russell Wilson didn't play the entire year, but I see a lot of similarities between the Steelers and the Giants in terms of personnel. Obviously, the Giants defense is better, but I feel like the Steelers defense is better, but the Giants offense might be better with Brian Daboll being the one calling plays there. We're going to get into our other two teams, but before we do, I want to give a quick shout out to our sponsors over at Fanduel. It might be the offseason, but if you bet on the NFL and NFL futures, Fanduel is the place to go for that action. I mean, they have everything from award props, to who's going to win the Super Bowl, to win the conference, to win the divisions. They even have win totals that you can parlay only at Fanduel. Just visit fanduel.com/forward progress to download America's #1 sportsbook. That's fanduel.com/forward progress. Rob, we went with the Raiders. You went with the Raiders. I went with the Giants. Who is your second team to shock in 2025?
Yeah, for some people, they'd be like, Rob, this is lame for you to use this team. What's going to be shocking about them? And let me get to that. I'm going to go with the 49ers. They went from NFC champs to 6-11. I've never seen a luck profile quite like the one that they had last year. Like, we're talking about bottom 6 in every single major luck metric that I look at. They lost 142 games due to injury, adjusted games lost due to injury. That's 23 more than any other team. -10 turnover differential, fumble recovery rate of 45%, opponent field goal percentage of 94%. Everything that could go wrong for them went wrong for them over the course of the year. And I mean, it starts with the injuries, right? Like, they were a walking triage unit last year. Christian McCaffrey, most of the year injured with Achilles, PCL. Brandon Ayuk tore his ACL and MCL. Trent Williams missed time with an ankle injury. Javon Hargrave, Dre Greenlaw, Talanoa Hufanga, George Kittle, Debo Samuel, Brock Purdy, their quarterback, even their backup running backs, Elijah Mitchell, Jordan Mason. Like, you get the point. They had to patch together depth charts every single week. Their adjusted games lost due to injury at running back alone was the second highest in NFL history. This isn't like injuries are part of football. This is a total collapse of roster health. And they were still top 5 in total yards, but they just couldn't finish drives. And that includes Brock Purdy not being right, McCaffrey not being there. You had games where they just couldn't hold leads. They lost late to the Rams and Cardinals in back-to-back weeks. They finished with a bad defense, 25th overall in scoring defense. That's because their top-end players were either in the training room or playing hurt all year. This team still has talent, but talent doesn't matter when you're pulling off guys pulling guys off the street by week 13. It just doesn't work out. Now, some people might say, well, what's changed for this year? The roster looks worse on paper. They lost Greenlaw, they lost Debo, they lost Hufanga. They didn't make any big offensive line upgrades. That's real. But a ton of that gets offset by just simple regression to average luck. Like, the 49ers just need to be normal. And not only are they in the playoff mix, I think that they're a contender in the NFC. I love Robert Saleh back running the defense, a role where he's already been elite with the same regime. I think they had a horrible DC last year. I think Saleh, while he might stink as a head coach, he's going to squeeze every ounce out of this unit that he has. Kyle Shanahan, still one of the best game planners in football. Say what you want about the playoff chokes. His weekly offensive scripts are a clinic. They've got Jawan Jennings, who broke out in Ayuk's absence. I think he's a really good receiver. Ricky Pearsall could thrive in the slot. It's not like this is a bare cupboard of weapons. They still have very, very good weapons, and they have what's projected to be the easiest schedule in the entire league. I think a lot of things can work in their favor. They're priced even with the Rams in the division. They're behind Green Bay and Washington to win the NFC. So when I'm talking about shock teams, like, I don't buy that at all. Could the 49ers implode again? Sure. I mean, this is the NFL. Anything could happen. The injury gods could roll another 20-sided die and wreck them. But if they're healthy early, they have a very manageable 4-game stretch to start the year. They could be 4-0 by week 5. I'm thinking this is still a Super Bowl caliber team. I think if you're pricing them like a middle to above average tier NFC team, you're underestimating the coaching, the structure, and just how fluky last year really was. So I think, there's so much talk this offseason about the 49ers being dead. The Rams are the team in the NFC West. I don't agree at all. I think the 49ers returned to form this year, and they're a legitimate Super Bowl contender.
Yeah, no, the biggest part I think about the pieces that they lost is that they are towards the wrong end of the aging curve, right? Like Deebo Samuel, he's like getting up there in his 30s. Like these guys are getting older, and like usually this is a process for teams to kind of lose themselves when they retain guys like that in Hufanga, Greenlaw, Ward, Samuel. But you're right, like the pieces are there, especially on offense for this team to be successful. And of course, like I think the Salah addition for them in terms of the coaching room is going to be a big plus. So Niners to be a sleeper team. I was going to rag on you a bit for it, but I think some people in the comments might do it.
Yeah.
And I think it's fair, but I think you're right. They could be, in terms of where they are right now, in terms of market expectations, they could be sleepers.
It's all relative to expectation,
Yes.
right? And I think if you asked a lot of people now, or if you told them the 49ers will win the Super Bowl next year, or could win the Super Bowl, they're going to probably tell you you're out to lunch. I think people think the 49ers era where they were competitive is done. They spent too much money on Brock Purdy. How are they going to compete? I don't think that that's the case at all. I still think this is a very strong foundational team with really good coaching. And I don't think this era is over at all. I think this is a legitimate threat in the NFC.
Yeah, they are definitely a legitimate threat in the NFC. All right, that takes us over to our final team, my team, and the team that I'm picking to be a sleeper. And this to me is an actual sleeper in the Seattle Seahawks. So I like the Seattle Seahawks a lot last year. Obviously, coming into this year, they lose Geno Smith, they lose DK Metcalf. But I think the biggest thing for them is that they still have a strong coaching staff. So right now, year 2 of Mike McDonald, to me, I still believe he is a top 5 mind on the defensive side of the ball in terms of coaching. I really believe in this defense. It looks legit when you take a look at it. Cornerback, not a very sticky position, but if you look at their secondary in totality, they have great talent. Julian Love, Kobe Bryant, Devin Witherspoon, Tariq Woolen, tons of great players on the defensive side of the ball. On top of that, trenches look really good with Boye Mafe, Leonard Williams. They also added DeMarcus Lawrence, which will help them out a lot. The questions with them come when we look on the offensive side of the ball, right? Like I mentioned, you lose Geno Smith, you lose DK Metcalf, but you bring in Sam Darnold and you bring in Cooper Kupp. How much of that is offset by bringing in those guys? I'm not saying Sam Darnold and Cooper Kupp are better than the duo of Geno Smith and DK Metcalf, but I think when you bring those guys in, on top of Clint Kubiak, who looked pretty decent in the Saints for at least a few weeks, right? There were some weeks where they looked really bad, but I thought he looked good when his team was fully healthy. I think this offense could potentially be an offense that overachieves compared to expectations. I think a lot of people believe Sam Darnold is going to turn back into a pumpkin. Listen, we saw it. Under the bright lights, he struggles. But for right now, the Seahawks are being priced as a 7-8-ish win team. We don't need Sam Darnold. For this team to overachieve, we don't need Sam Darnold to be the guy under the bright lights. We need Sam Darnold to be Sam Darnold Sunday at 1 p.m., and I think he has the ability to do that. So I really think that with this offense, and this offense is good enough to carry this team. On top of that, their defense is their biggest strength. I could see it Fat Tail being a top 5 defense. So for me, in terms of, I don't want to call it overachieving, but sleeper teams, I think that the Seattle Seahawks are a team that could shock people in 2025.
This one I'm less inclined to agree with.
Okay.
I love the points on the defense. I do like the Seahawks defensive personnel. Outside of the linebacking core, I don't really think there's a weak spot there. And I agree that they have like legitimate top 5 potential as a defense. I have a few issues with them. Offensive line being one. I think they're set at left tackle. Charles Cross had a really good leap forward last year. They'll be starting a rookie in Gray Zabel, likely at left guard this year. Oluwatimi at center, who's not very good. Their right guard, Anthony Bradford, is one of the worst guards in the entire league. Abraham Lucas at right tackle, who has been dealing with injuries, but pretty average. The only reason I don't love that is I think Geno Smith got around a lot of the O-line issues with his mobility. Yes, he did take some sacks on third down, and that was always an issue. Darnold was well protected to start last year, and he thrived off that. And then as soon as the protection went away, he turned into a pumpkin and looked like the Sam Darnold of old. And I have concerns that will happen again this year. I also, I like the receivers, but not necessarily the setup. Like, I don't like JSN as an outside guy. I loved him in the slot. I don't think MVS is going to give you a ton on the outside now. He's getting older. Cooper Kupp, who knows what he has left. But it seems like they have a good makeup of slot receivers and no one that can, I don't want to say no one, but it'll be a little bit more challenging for them to win on the outside. So I'm not as optimistic on this offense. I don't see this as being a Viking situation where Darnold comes in and he turns it around. I think what we saw towards the end of last year, the final week of the season with Detroit plus playoffs, is more of an indication of who Darnold is. And that's why I think that the Seahawks, especially with the 49ers, who I love, by the way, if you didn't catch that, the Rams, and even Arizona, who I think is going to take a step forward this year, I think the Seahawks are the bottom of the bunch there.
I could see that. I think that's fair. I think the biggest thing for me is hoping that Clint Kubiak, that he can kind of scheme his way around the offensive line issues. And on top of that, like, if you look at this offense, this could be an offense that kind of slashes through you and kind of cuts you up, right, with their depth at running back in Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet, and JSN, Cooper Kupp winning in the short and intermediate routes. That's their path to being a strong team in my head. That's the type of offense that they run for them to be a strong team, and they kind of rely on their defense to help them win games. I really think their defense gives them the floor, and I think people are really counting out Sam Darnold. So those two combined, I think that's where I fall on the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah, Kubiak has had a history of scheming behind like good offenses, or at least decent to start the year. Let's say last year, behind a bad offensive line. I understand the points. I think you can make a strong argument for really any team in the NFL if you spin it the right way. Ultimately, I'm just not as high on the offense, and I'm really concerned that Cooper Kupp may be entirely cooked at this point. And then that receiving core starts to look, you have Torrey Horton, fifth round pick, is going to be like, Jake Bobo's still there. It goes south real quick after MVS. After JSN.
Yeah, no, and we could probably go back and forth on this all day, but we have to get out of here. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Do us a favor, if you made it this far, go smash that like button. Goes a long way for us in the algorithm. And if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Me and Rob are going back and forth on the Seattle Seahawks. We want to hear your thoughts on the Seattle Seahawks and all the teams we discussed. Do we miss your favorite sleeper team in 2025? Let us know in the comments section down below. Make sure you're subscribed as well to Forward Progress. Of course, got tons of videos coming your way. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll see you in the next one.